Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you. So today we're going to talk about Caber, also known as Cabergoline, also known as Dostinex. But before we get into that, I have to reiterate that I'm not a doctor. Anything I say in these videos is for your entertainment purposes only. What you do with this information is completely and utterly up to you, and I am not advising nor condoning you to use any of the things that we discuss in any way, shape, or form. So, let's discuss Caber. Now, Caber is a fungi derivative, and it's a really potent dopamine receptor agonist. Now, numerous studies out there that you can find easily will show you that cabergoline inhibits prolactin, as most of us do know. Now, it's generally preferred over things like bromocriptine, for example, because it has a longer half-life and the side effects are a lot lower. Pramipexole is another one that's often used. However, the side effects on that, as many of you know, can be pretty brutal. Now, the FDA actually approved it back in 1996, and it went generic in 2005 after its patent expired in the United States. So quickly, I want to talk to you about some uses in medicine first before we get into like why it's used on cycle and things of that nature. Now, there's many actual uses that the medical world is discovering for Dostinex. All right, now that would include hyperprolactinemia, prolactin-producing tumors, Parkinson's disease, Cushing's disease, and just a myriad of other ailments out there. Now, one of the best known uses for cabergoline is in tumors and cancers that are related to high prolactin levels. In fact, it's an industry-leading drug when it comes to shrinking prolactin-secreting macrodenomas. Now, how does it work? Well, basically, Caber is a long-acting dopamine D2 receptor agonist. Now, some rat studies out there will show you that it inhibits prolactin secretion basically in the pituitary's lactotroph cells. Now, prolactin is a protein hormone which is best known for enabling female mammals to produce milk. However, there are many other functions for prolactin in both males and females. Now, when you're taking Caber, the prolactin doesn't get secreted from the pituitary, which then causes prolactin levels to drop. Now, in males, the most well-known effect of prolactin, and most of you may not know this, but it's actually during and after ejaculation. This is called the sexual refractory period. During this time, a man will lose interest in sex and feel satisfied. Now, I'll discuss this here in a little bit to kind of further explain that to you. But I want to talk about some bodybuilding uses. Now, there's several different ways you can use Caber in bodybuilding. All right, since it's a dopamine agonist, some people then believe that they can take it to give themselves an adrenaline rush during a sporting event. Also, the addition of dopamine can then improve motor skills and give you an edge over your competition. So in theory, you would be able to work out much harder and you would kind of, I guess, be able to ignore pain pushing your muscles to the limit. The main way that bodybuilders use Caber is when they run a certain compound which increases prolactin levels in the body. So, for example, trenbolone will turn into prolactin, and when you abuse it, you can get prolactin-based gynecomastia. Now, in addition, a spike in prolactin can just destroy your sex drive, all right? Even when you do not run a compound that increases prolactin, Caber can still normalize your libido when you are playing around with your hormones. Another way Caber can be used, in bodybuilding is by its mechanism of actually mimicking dopamine being produced from food intake. All right, and a lot of people don't know about that. If you've ever had a craving for greasy pizza or, cakes, candies, ice cream, whatever the case may be, whatever treat that you shouldn't be eating. Well, when you take Caber, what happens? Well, the dopamine being released can act as a pleasure chemical, which can make just a simple bite of pizza, for example, satisfy you rather than eating the whole thing. So this adds weight loss goals and, adds to them, and it helps you stay leaner, in theory. And finally, sleep. And people that have used good quality Caber can tell you that you will sleep. All right. Many bodybuilders that take Caber report improved sleep thanks to the dopamine mimic. Some people oversleep. This allows you to sleep, longer, deeper, more often, things like that. Now, I told you I'd talk about cabergoline and sex, so let's talk about that. So when a man ejaculates during sex, what happens? Well, his prolactin levels then spike up, and that causes him to lose interest in sex. Rat studies have proven that Caber actually reduces prolactin in the body, so when you take the Caber, you will be able to regain your sex drive quicker. When you are on a cycle or when you're coming off a cycle, your sex drive can be altered, sometimes in a great way and sometimes in a not so great way. All right, especially when something like tren is involved. So in this instance, if libido and sex drive is an issue, then guess what? Caber can be added to your cycle or even your post-cycle to aid in prolactin level rebalancing. So now here's a question that I've heard several times that we'll talk about. Why do men have prolactin if they don't breastfeed? Well, Mother Nature's pretty smart, all right? So as I said earlier, female mammals have increased prolactin levels, which causes milk to be produced so that they can breastfeed their baby. Now, here's a theory, is that maybe Mother Nature decided to give men prolactin as we evolved to prevent overpopulation of humans. So if a man, ejaculates, then what happens? Like I said, then they're satisfied and they lose interest in sex. Then they won't want to have sex again for certain periods of time. This is why guys like to have sex, and then, oftentimes they just want to roll over or go do their own thing, or just kind of, are turned off. That's how some guys are. Well, that's the refractory period. All right. So if you take Caber, well, that refractory period is going to be a lot shorter, and you'll be ready for sex again much sooner. Now, there are some side effects possible on Caber. Stomach pain is one thing that's possible. Being very lethargic is another that you got to be aware of. So you might want to take it before bed, and maybe sometimes even with food. There are some studies out there that say long-term Caber use can have some damage on your heart. There's some studies that will argue for and against that. So that's another thing to be aware of as well. But in terms of really hard-hitting side effects, you're not going to find Caber to have as many as something like Promipexole or bromocriptine, for example. I mentioned earlier that that Caber was more popular because of a longer half-life than something like bromocriptine, for example. So we're looking at 3 days as opposed to like 12 hours with bromo, and so that's why many guys do prefer it. Now they will complain that it's expensive, but you have to consider you're only using it every 3 days, so it's being that potent. It might seem expensive on the surface, but if you add it up on how often you're actually using it, maybe 8 pills a month, if you even need that much. So you have to factor that in as well. Generally, you only need it twice a week. Now, dosing-wise, it really depends on how high you're running things. 0.25 milligrams every 3 days is a pretty strong dose. If you're abusing something like tren or deca, you might need to go 0.5 milligrams every 3 days. But generally 0.25 milligrams every 3 days on at least a moderate dose of tren or deca should be plenty, as long as you have quality, Caber. So that is Dostinex Caber, usually in pill form, but, research liquid is out there, but it's frowned upon, I guess. I would much more prefer anybody that's going to use a pill form for, a lot of people will claim that the Dostinex can't hold in suspension in liquid form, or it will only last for a certain small period of time. I would just be more comfortable with the pill form myself. If you're wanting to try the liquid form, by all means, but just remember that I said it's not the best option, and I would try to stick with the pill form if possible. So that being said, www.isarms.com/forums. I'm also in the evolutionary form as well as the elite fitness form. You can also email me, Dylan@isarms.com, and please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli, signing off.